Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Wellness Hustle podcast. This is Dr. Neville Campbell, your host. And I want to thank you. Thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for liking the content so far. We have had a lot of guests, but I think today is going to bring you a unique perspective. This is a young doctor on the rise, just out of training not too long ago. But I believe his perspective is extremely interesting and his story is worth sharing. Again, this podcast dives deep into stories. It looks at the things that people typically don't say, how they got there, what were the challenges they experienced, and how they navigated through them. Oftentimes we look at the end point and we don't see the journey, but the character is built in the journey. Today we will talk about the building of the character of Dr. Iggy. Dr. Iggy, welcome to the Wellness Hustle podcast.
So nice to be here.
Of course, my guy, of course. He is like my brother, my mentee, I just admire what he's doing. I saw him for the first time. I saw you on social media, I think in 2020 or 2021, and I've been peripherally watching your journey, watching what's happening. Oftentimes we see on social media one perspective, but you and I know the cold truth is oftentimes more than what is seen or shared. Today, let's talk about a few things that you and I have talked about before, but I believe beyond the smile, let's talk about the challenges that you found along this journey of becoming who you are today, which is a orthopedic surgeon here in Atlanta. Let's talk about this journey. Let's talk about your training.
Let's do it.
Where did you train?
So I trained in Dallas, Texas at UT Southwestern.
That's a great program.
Great program, premier program.
Yeah.
Busiest ER in the nation, voted multiple times in the last few years.
Yeah.
And the fun fact is I was born at that program.
Oh my goodness. Talk about destiny and God putting things back together. Why do you think you were born at that program that you trained at, if you had to put a theory to that?
You know, I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And even the Lord Jesus Christ returned back to the city he was born in.
Right.
And even when he returned to his people, he wasn't always accepted by his people.
What do you mean by this?
And what I mean by that is I can't say that upon returning to the hospital I was born in for training, I had the best experience, the most pleasurable experience.
Really? And why do you think that's the case?
I'm still figuring out the why. The why could be that I was different. The why could be that it was me.
But isn't difference a good thing?
Obviously, yes, most of the time. But when you're in an environment, one thing I always use the analogy, not analogy, but I always reference assimilation. The term assimilation is directed to the minority group. The minority group is assimilating to the majority. The majority is not assimilating to the minority.
Correct.
And I think, as you and I both know, in medicine, where there's a lot of disparities in representation, the trick for the minority, however they may be defined, is to assimilate to the group. That's probably not really spoken about. Obviously, no one can put that on paper. There's a lot of efforts for improved and increased diversity, but until that diversity matches the chemistry of the nation in terms of our demographic makeup, those minorities will have to assimilate to a degree so that they are not overly misunderstood by the majority.
Gotcha. So am I to understand then, based on what you stated earlier, that you had trouble assimilating?
Mm-hmm.
How so?
You know, your background, how you're raised, your experiences will definitely affect your expression.
Yeah.
There's obviously things about your personality that are inborn, ingrained, things that you're going to do anyway, but the fine-tuning comes with the nurture, nature versus nurture. And I think when you don't share a lot of similar experiences with the group, that affects how, what you value sometimes. Like my idea of fun, my idea of even culture doesn't mirror my counterpart sometimes because I was raised in a Nigerian household. Even though I went into an American world every day, I was raised in a Nigerian household. So my experiences at home, I have to translate when I get into the public. In the same way with a very niche work environment, at that point, you're built by so many experiences. And when you're engaging, those experiences are behind you, but it can sometimes lead to you expressing yourself that isn't maybe generally understood. Like, if I like to do something on the weekend, say, okay, like I'm a hooper, I love to play ball.
Right.
A lot of people play ball. But there's some terms when you talk about playing ball that people just get and understand. And then also, like, there's a whole culture around playing ball. So when you ask a guy, hey, you playing ball this Saturday? They're like, yo, are you playing ball? Y'all go play ball. Y'all build a connection. But if you ask me to play, say, pickleball right now,
right,
it's hot in one group, but I don't play pickleball.
right,
But a lot happens when people play pickleball together.
right.
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Having shared interests, kind of based off your background, that sometimes nurture a relationship
Right,
that bleeds into the professional environment.
right.
So I would say I didn't necessarily click and connect on that level initially very well.
Do you believe that sort of challenge in assimilating impacted your medical training?
No, the reality is yes, it's going to affect anyone because we're humans. You're interacting with humans. Yes, we are professionals and we're highly trained to do things precisely and consistently. When it comes to interaction, that's not a precise and consistent interaction. Task all the time. It's a bit fluid and it doesn't apply the same way to every person. And so yes, it affects it because in training, you're learning medicine, which can be objective, but everyone learns differently and everyone teaches differently. And I think the motivation to teach others sometimes can be fueled by how well they feel a connection. And building that connection goes back to what I was talking about when people feel a similarity, some kind of bond. And if you're good at building that bond, then someone may be more invested in teaching you. But if you're not good, then these are things that they'll never say or they may not ever be able to articulate, but they may not feel as motivated to teach you.
Gotcha. Looking back at this journey, are there things that you reflect on now that you think you could have done differently?
Oh, absolutely.
That you thought in the moment then that it was correct?
Absolutely.
If so, give me an example. Let's bring this home.
So, let's see. There's a lot of events that happen on the weekends or when you're after work. Sometimes I'll go to a bar or hang out at some restaurant as a means to build more camaraderie. There were times in my training where honestly I was socially exhausted due to some of the perceived friction I had at work that I didn't really feel the incentive of partaking in those opportunities to build a stronger connection. And in turn, I think it just further deepened the gap between the social gap between myself and my peers, which obviously translated into work experiences.
Gotcha. If you had to rewrite all of that and do things differently, clearly, every coin has two sides. There's what you could have done, but there's also what could have been done on the other side. Now, what you and I can do, we have direct control over that. But there are some systemic issues that we don't have control over.
Yeah.
if you had an opportunity, or if you could highlight some of those issues on the other side that are possibly even systemic, that if you had the ability to change today so that the future Dr. Iggy's coming along could have a smoother experience, what would a few of those be?
Well, your question changed.
All right, go ahead.
You started off
Go ahead.
suggesting what I would do different,
Mm-hmm.
and then you went on to talk about what I would suggest be different in terms of my environment. So what I would have done differently,
Right.
the answer is nothing.
Okay.
I think everything I did was destined to happen.
Right.
Because I acted in the best consciousness and knowledge and wisdom that I had at the time. Short term, did I make mistakes that I quickly realized? Sure, but I don't think there's anything that I would have done to change that. I think I learned from those mistakes and I grew from those mistakes. All the negative experiences that I may allude to, they hurt really bad at the time. But I really don't think I'd be who I am today if I didn't encounter them.
Right.
And so now, hindsight being 2020, how would I make suggestions for the system? Well, my suggestions for the system would really be rooted in creating a more nurturing environment for those who may not come to the table with the same experiences as others that are hard to objectify. And I think creating an open community like that allows for everyone to gain value from each other, rather than those who are in the more homogenous group being separated from the ones that stand out. Because those who stand out often can feel like they're on an island, and I think that definitely plays into the mental health issues that manifest with physicians. The work is already hard enough. When the team environment is not cohesive, it just makes it that much worse.
What's one of your escapes? Like, what do you do to escape from all of this? People have various things. What's one of yours?
I talked about basketball.
Okay.
It's a huge one. Obviously, it's exercise, but it's a good way to get off stress and to control the environment. The next one would be my family. I have a large family. I'm number 5 of 6. I got, 3 other doctors in my family. They understand. So I can vent to them and they'll understand. The last one to mention, well, no, I have 2 more. One more to mention is my faith, which really would be the first one, but my faith is really what I lean on when I don't have anyone at midnight to talk to, or if I'm crying in the middle of the night, I can't cry to anybody. I cry to God personally. When I'm angry and I don't have anyone to talk to or vent to, I vent to God. And in my experience, He's always answered. He always answers me. He tells me, Matt, you're tripping. Or He'll tell me, Matt, be patient. It's okay. And then the last outlet is social media. My virtual community. I feed a lot from my virtual community. I pour a lot into my virtual community. And arguably that hobby alone, that outlet alone, is what led to actually more issues in my experience as in training.
Really? So your hobby came in conflict? Is that, or brought attention to where there was some sort of conflict around what was happening? How did that happen? How did that manifest?
So during the pandemic, a lot of creators were born because a lot of people had more free time. They're at home, and that led to virtual connection. And with like platforms like TikTok, Instagram, people start to express themselves creatively. And I was one of them. And I found a huge knack for it. I loved it. I loved the tech behind it, setting up angles, making transitions. And then on the other side, the community side, I found a whole group of people that, 1, were inspired by my journey, but 2, were encouraging me on a very difficult journey. And that was extremely valuable to me. Because when I went to the workplace where either, patient conditions are very dire, or your colleagues may not be treating you as well as you would expect or like, it can cause some confusion and make you feel like maybe you're doing something wrong or make you question your value to a system. But when you have a group that's cheering you on and telling you, hey, no, you're good, bro, you're doing great, that just gives you a new level of motivation. So how did that get in the way? Well, over time with my newfound skill and interest, I started to go viral. And really, I think the crux was when, in the peak of the COVID pandemic, which coincided with a lot of social unrest in our country, there's a young man named Ahmaud Arbery who actually got shot while running, exercising. And I saw myself in his story. Why? Because when I'm playing basketball, I don't think people would know I'm a doctor or even an aspiring surgeon. But I think they'd probably think twice about messing with someone who they think is about to be a surgeon, which I think is wrong, because my humanity and that young man's humanity are equal. And that led me to posting about it in a way that I thought was constructive for both sides.
Right.
Went so viral that it got picked up by People magazine and published. And then once it got published there, then the story became wide known to my program. And I think it put me under a microscope. It gave people an opportunity to observe me more closely. And they used my digital footprint as a proxy for what they were dealing with in person. And so I think it changed their perception towards me. In fact, I was told that it was changing their perception towards me. And with that, I tried to make modifications, but I think the damage was done in that sense. And by damage, I don't mean that I was doing something damaging or wrong or deconstructive. I think the damage was done in the sense that people who have views that may not match your own were able to create a perception pretty quick, and I don't think they were well or open to changing that perception. And that was the damage, because the people whose perception changed are in a position of power. And at that point, I'm at their mercy. So that kind of led to some of the pain.
Yeah. What do you think that all of this experience, it has to be, you're a believer in God, right? Things happen for a reason, right?
Absolutely.
And oftentimes when you reflect on Bible stories and they had to go through trials and tests, it's oftentimes preparatory.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see in the grand scheme of things for future for you? And could any of those experiences been preparatory in nature for what is to come?
The answer is, if I'm not dead, they're absolutely preparatory for something. And I don't need to know every answer to that right now. But what I do know, and what I hold on to, is a scripture in James 1. James 1, verse 2-4, I just will paraphrase it. It says, "Be joyful when you experience trials of many kinds, because in that it produces perseverance and hope and other virtues. And ultimately, it leads you to being complete and perfect, not lacking in anything."
Right.
And so what that means to me is perfection is not flawlessness, but perfection is wholeness, like completeness. And it means that by all these trials I go through, it helps me gain the characteristics necessary for me to be more holistic, to see the world more holistic, to treat people more holistic, and to really be more humble to this life experience itself.
You know, when they're making pure gold, it has to go through tremendous heat. Mm-hmm. When diamonds are being made from coal, the pressure is for most people unbearable. And people step away from the pressures, but this is the diamond making process. Were there times during residency and training that you wanted to walk away from it, and what held you?
The highest pressure point in that experience was my third year residency. And that's a year after my social media career started. I was facing a lot of scrutiny on the job. I, in hindsight, learned that I had attendings who were asking my co-residents where I was anytime I had a post go up. Mind you, you could schedule a post. Sometimes I'm at home. And they would be asking my co-residents to see where I am, obviously for the intent of incrimination. They never asked me. They had my number. And by the grace of God, I never broke any of those rules. But there was that intent. At the end of the day, with all the pressure and all of the perceptions that were built, they were able to craft a story well enough to justify me having to spend an extra year in residency. That was hard. And that was 2 months before I had started my next year. And there was no warning. Moreover, my personal life wasn't great. My dating life was falling apart. And it just, all that together felt really horrible. At that point, that's where I felt like I was going to be crushed. And at that point, I don't even know if I had the desire to stay on earth, to be honest. At that point, waking up every day was like waking up into a brick wall. And you can only do that for so long. And when life brings you to your knees, when life brings you to your lowest point, I cried out to God. And as I cried out to God, He met me where I was. And where I was on my floor in my apartment living room with the sun shining bright on my face in the midsummer Texas heat without my AC on. But because of the pain of my journey at the time, I was so numb to that. And I had no desire to continue. But by small experiences, God kept giving me hope. And where He started was giving me confidence in Him and not in people. Because I had put all my confidence in my training program, my superiors, to entrust my success in their hands with both discipline and grace. But I don't think I was experiencing that. And so in that confusion, I said, Lord, I need help. I need confidence. And He led me to 2 Timothy 2:15, which says, study to show thyself approved, a workman need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And the way I break it down is, you study for yourself. You study for your own approval. I'm studying for my patients. I'm not studying for Dr. So-and-so's approval. Yes, it may overlap with their approval, but I need to make sure my patients are okay. And I don't know if I can trust their feedback, to be honest. So I study for myself. The next step says, a workman need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Well, the opposite of shame is confidence, in my opinion. And so my confidence was rooted in my ability to rightly divide truth. And to me, when it comes to truth, science, facts, I believe the Lord created everything I see. Science just explains it. And so when I study medicine, anatomy for surgeries, I'm studying the truth of God, so I'm not ashamed, and I'm dedicated to Him, and through that, I built my confidence. And that confidence didn't really rely on any human at that point.
Dr. Iggy, one final question I have for you this evening on the podcast. I'm certain your experience is not unique. There are possibly several residents going through the same situations right now. I'm not certain if it's going to be if their issue is their passion for social media, but whatever that passion is, I'm sure that passion is conflicting or brought into conflict with what the expectations are from the superiors of whatever programs they're going through right now. People are watching. I'm sure you've spoken to some of them. What advice can you impart to any of these residents or even people who are aspiring to be residents at this time about what they may encounter along the journey and what you found that pulled you through so that when they get there, they know that it is possible to get through this no matter how difficult or dark this night might seem.
For the first one would be count the cost. You need to count the cost of the journey that you're asking yourself to go through. In terms of medicine in general, count the cost that you will sacrifice time with family. You'll miss critical events in life. And you need to count it and say to yourself, it's worth it. If it feels that way, you keep going. If you cannot say that it's worth it, you need to find something else. That's my advice. That's the first one. For those that are in, if you want to engage in social media, on the same line, you need to be aware of your playing field. If you're with a bunch of people that are not progressive and aren't really open to that type of expression, my friend, be wise. The system is powerful. The system is larger than you. You need to be humble. You need to be a good worker and try to be mindful of what you're doing and how it can affect your experience. My experience, I was acting in my best knowledge at the time, and so I have no regrets. But the wisdom that I know now is that social media is not worth my career in orthopedic surgery. And if I had to choose one, I would have chosen my career in orthopedic surgery. In fact, I deactivated my social media for 6 months with the intent of ultimately deleting it, but God gave me wisdom not to do that. And so on the last point is essentially speaking to the fact that I continue, is that your personal brand is going to be extremely valuable and probably the most valuable thing after your credentials and skills. Get your credentials and skills, ensure that you can get through your program without, stifling your own success, but don't let people think that you don't have a personal brand. At some point, you're going to realize that after you've entrusted yourself to the system for so long, you at some point need to look outside the system for your brand, your value, your purpose. It's bigger than your career. It's bigger than your credentials. It's bigger than your bank account. And I think at that point, you'll really be fulfilled in the life that you've been given.
Dr. Iggy, seems like we've had quite a few conversations.
Yeah.
Folks, I could not have wrapped this up any better. Purpose is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than our bank accounts, our professions, our relationships. And God has really called us to walk into purpose. We have to be wise about it. We have to be wise as we traverse the difficult journey with the snares, the roadblocks, the cliffs, those treacherous waters as we navigate all of them. But just know that if you continue to lean into the difficult, lean into the challenging, you're leaning into purpose. Dr. Iggy, it's a pleasure having you. I'm excited about your journey. I'm excited about where this next step in life will take you. And as you combine what you believe purpose might be with your profession, I really believe that that's where the greatest good in that sector will be found. It was a pleasure having you, man.
Nice
Thanks
to
again.
be had.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much.